Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Taryn, and wow, we have a full group today. This is a large class. It looks like by the count that everybody signed up has shown up, so that's kind of rare. That's why we're kind of running out of seats. Um, oh, okay, yeah, good, very, very good. Age to Perfection is the title, and that's what, and the quality too, right? I'll try to live up to it. Um, so, a couple of housekeeping things. One is that if there are any questions during the presentation, just please save it to the end. I like to save about 5-10 minutes of Q&A so that way we can kind of cover what we're going through. I tend to talk a little fast too, so just please try to, if I'm going too quickly, raise a hand and tell me to just slow down. Or also, if can everybody hear me at this tone? This level's okay. And if you can't, just please give me the little sign and say speak up. But I'll try to make sure that I talk clearly and enunciate, and I'll try to get us out of here in time too, because I know that I'm really excited. Y'all signed up for a 3-hour seminar. We'll get out of here about 4:30. Oh, okay, yeah, there we go. Just checking to see if everybody was still listening to me. So today's topic is covering younger next year. Has anybody in here read this book at all by any chance? I see one hand and a whole bunch of shaking heads. Good, that's good. Excellent. Well, today's presentation will cover this book, which, by the way, I'll go ahead and plug it. It's on Amazon for about 10 or 11 bucks. It would definitely be well worth it. I'm sure they have free copies at the library and maybe even some free electronic PDF copies online. I highly encourage to check it out because today's presentation is that if you were to go get this book, this is the next hour that we're together talking about what's jam-packed in this book. There's a lot to cover, and I'm going to go over all the principles that are very important to this because, as a young lady mentioned just a few minutes ago, this is a very important topic of discussion that we're talking about, is how to live younger next year. And a lot of those basic core tenets that we'll be covering straight from the book is kind of to emphasize the whole theme of, you've always heard this, you're as old as you feel, right? So, for example, using myself, you're as old as you feel. I always hear this a lot with the clients that I work with. You're as old as you feel, and you hear a lot of people saying, well, in that case, I feel like I'm 95 years old today because I get out of bed, my back hurts, and I'm walking really slowly. And a lot of times, a negative connotation is implied with aging, right? We don't like that word aging. When we hear aging, what do we hear? We hear old, and that doesn't necessarily have to go hand in hand, as we know. And we're going to cover that too. We're going to kind of go over the list of topics here. And as he mentioned, as I saw like a couple of minutes ago from this slide, it's just jam-packed. A lot of objectives to cover. We'll try to get all through this in the next, again, 45 minutes to 50 minutes and just kind of just cover everything of all the strategies that we can go through on all of these various topics of the science of aging leading to mind shift sets, how to embrace gracefully aging, leading into things like exercise, eating well, how important is sleeping, and etc. And again, as you look at this list, this whole pillars of a list is straight from the whole concept of younger next year. Not only do they have a book, they have a great website. They have a lot of invaluable resources available via YouTube. They've got free videos online, and I highly recommend them because in my industry of health and fitness, that's something that is really taken as a core principle that we kind of borrow when that book was first written back in around 2007. And a lot of people, again, baby boomers, I'm sure we have many in this room, kind of got the opportunity to listen to those types of principles from two very well-educated people that wrote this whole system. And so basically just throwing out the question, what does it mean to live younger next year? Okay, let's talk about that for a second. I mentioned in health and fitness, I've been working in it for a long time. I know that I've met a few of you. I see some familiar faces in here. And again, I hear it all the time too. Again, I'm not going to try to brag, but a lot of times I'll hear different age categories where people will ask me, you must be like, what, 25? And some people say, no, you're 35, or maybe he's close to 40. I'm actually 45 years old, okay? And a lot of it, I don't have gray hair yet, and I probably have good genetics thanks to some Asian blood in my family. So there's some of that, but I've also been working in health and fitness since 1999, so about 25 years. And in my job, using me as an example again, I don't sit at a desk at all. I do what I'm doing right now. I move a lot. I work with clients. As an exercise psychologist, I'm always interacting and engaging in discussion and dialogue with different people that I'm trying to help, whether it be losing weight, whether it be decreasing their stress, you name it, building strength. And all of those are so important of why we're talking about this. So again, age is really just a number. It's a number that of the many years that we've lived versus the number of years that we've got left. And our goal is to not only live younger, but also to live a lifestyle to where we're not in pain, where we don't have to worry about those nagging body aches all the time. And you hear a lot during, let's face it, in our life through social media and the news media and everything, all of the different fads, right? Every type of diet. Anybody in here, by a raise of hands, has anybody been on one of the classic diets, whether it be Atkins, Mediterranean, you name it, any of them? And again, we've seen a lot of those during the years of, oh, this is the one that works. No, this is a myth. This one doesn't. And we've just heard everything from the gamut of when I was in school, there used to be the food pyramid. Some of us remember that, right? And then over the years, that thing got flipped upside down. So actually, the food pyramid is too full of the carbs and starches, and we should have less of those, and we really need to turn that thing upside down. And again, it's just been dissected and just different types of methodologies that you've heard of how to eat right. No wonder why. And again, even someone like me who's been working in that industry for so long, and you take any layman person, how are we supposed to understand what really is true as far as, no, that diet's fake, that one doesn't work, and then you hear fake news, no, that one's not true, oh, you should listen to this, you should watch this, because there's so many misconceptions out there. My hope is to try to just help align everything so that it just kind of makes sense from just a, standard of how to eat healthy, what we should be doing, and just borrowing those concepts from that Younger Next Year theme of what we should be doing. In Younger Next Year, they have a list of what we should be doing. And for example, in that list, again, we're really going to be delving deep into that and really diving into those principles that they list out. And a lot of them have to do with exercise, diet, everything that we've heard, right? Keeping your stress levels low, seeing your doctor, engaging in social connections, etc. And so when we're talking about that and we kind of go into that, you have to start at the foundation of it all, the science of aging. When we age, for example, everybody in this room, we're a day older than yesterday. Everybody, all of us have that in common, that we're not as young as we were yesterday in terms of the count of how old we are now, right? And physiologically, yes, that makes sense. Our cellular growth, all of the different mechanics of our body, anything that you take physiologically, that's what we're developing. We're experiencing that right now, and that just makes sense. But as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, there are a lot of myths. Like, for example, one of them you'll hear is, well, the older we get, we're going to be more feeble, decrepit. And that's not true, not at all. In fact, working in the industry I work with, I've seen people who are much, much better shape than if you compare them, say, 5, even 10 years ago. I'll give you an example. I got a person who's in their 70s right now. When I first met her, she could not do what I'm doing right now, getting down on the floor and then getting back up. That was her goal. Just, I want to be able to do that one time. She could do it 10 now. She couldn't do that when we first started. And functionality, how would you get to that point? Well, it's not a magic potion. It's not a miracle drug, but it really is a lot of hard work. It really takes a lot of sacrifice. And it takes, well, your homework is to do that every day, just doing one of those off the floor and then doing 5 of those in a couple of months until you get to 10. So just using that as an example, your body, in her case, she's certainly much, much younger and in better shape than she was many years ago when she couldn't do that. And again, just different types of impacts of aging itself. You'll hear a lot of times where it's very unfair when people will just categorize us as we're aging, saying, well, older population, they just don't know as much, they're not as quick, their cognitive decline, etc. While, again, that's an unfair generalization, the good thing is that we can be sharper. For example, from that book, Younger Next Year, with just as a generalization, if you include strength training and exercise, aerobic, physiological exercise in your program, then you can cut cognitive decline in half just about. And these are just from different research studies that have been from many, many decades. Actually, from a research study from over 100 years ago is when they started, back in like 1919, and they started kind of tracking that. And in terms of, what I like to call positive psychology, just really having a mindset. As I mentioned, I started my career as a physical personal trainer. Now I'm more of what you call an exercise psychologist. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is, I'll give you an example. When I first started, my career was working with people and teaching them fundamentals, teaching them correct form. How do you do a squat appropriately? You put your feet shoulder width apart. When you sit down, you're just sitting down like you're going into a chair. You keep your back nice and solid, and you bend your knees. Well, now, as an exercise psychologist, it's more of trying to tell the person why they should do that. When somebody says, well, I don't like to do that, why would I need to exercise? And it's really trying to teach them that we're trying to get to what's called a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A lot of us, and again, I count myself as number one in this classification, we get used to doing things that we do, without change, right? Change oftentimes can be a very combative word to some people, including when you add in, well, this is what you should be doing from now on. The good news is medical doctors are starting to come along with that when they're not only prescribing drugs, medications to their patients, but they're also recommending them, well, I think you need to start exercising. We've seen that a lot with the American Red Cross, American Cancer Society, World Health Organization, you name it, they're all getting on track the benefits of exercise, especially strength training, by the way, which we're really going to jump into as well. So again, it's all about your mind. It's all about having a good attitude. Attitude really is everything. Gracefully aging, this is so important. A lot of times when people, again, let's just use, for example, ladies. I don't want to pick on ladies in here, but for example, like the health and beauty business is what? Multi-billion-dollar business, right? When it comes to hair dyes and going out to the hair salon and clothing and makeup and accessories, right? While us guys, our budget is about $10 a couple months, right? Like me, pretty much, right? And getting back to like when people, are surprised, like, well, wow, Taryn, you're only 45 years old. You look like you're 12. And I said, well, that's because of the way I dress, pretty much. So, but again, us guys, stop picking on us for a second. In gracefully aging, it's just really about having a youthful mindset. It goes back to the slide just a couple of seconds ago. It's really about just focusing on a positive psychology. Like I said, that's what's really used, and it's really a lot in psychology is positive reinforcement. Okay, has anybody heard that term before? And a lot of parents in here, I'm guessing, probably, right? Maybe even grandparents. When would we use that? Probably with our children or our grandkids, right? For example, you want them to do something, you're probably going to reward them with, if you do this, you'll get this. And that's just human nature. That's how we're all. Well, in our case, if you sacrifice now, then you'll be able to reap the benefits later. There's a really good financial podcaster I've listened to him for many decades, named Dave Ramsey. And to steal his phrase, he always said that in financial terms, which we'll talk about later on, if you live like no one else now, then later on you can live like no one else, basically. So basically what he's saying is if you sacrifice, you put the blood, sweat, and tears in right now, and you work out hard, then you will see the benefits physiologically, like the science of aging, like we talked about, better improved health, cellular growth, biomechanics improving, just everything you could think of anatomically. You're going to get stronger, you're going to get leaner, body fat will be shed, blood pressure will be reduced, all of the things that we want to hear when we meet with our annual doctor's checkup, right? When we go see them. So that way that we're, again, gracefully aging. And also embracing it too, I had heard a sports athlete recently who was getting picked on because he's about my age. I think he's in mid 40s and he started getting gray. And they were kind of like telling him like, yeah, you don't use any type of like just for men or hair dye. And he was laughing. He's like, hey, I earned this, I'm proud of this. And again, that's a great attitude to have, is to just really say that I've earned where I'm at and embracing it and proud. And so again, let's just jump into, one of the components of physical fitness and exercise. We all know in here the benefits of exercise, that yes, exercise is important. That's why all of us are here right now too. And that's why really like a place like Fayette Senior Services really definitely helps promote things like that. Like for example, classes that you can go to, different various exercise group classes, different resources that you can have that are, again, I like a lot of resources that are available are free, on the internet and other methods as well. But, again, it's really about trying to determine what is the best exercise, that you can do. And I always get asked that question. People will say, Is it better to do a treadmill? Is it better to do swimming or biking? Which one's, the best? And my answer to that simply is the one that's the best is the one that you're going to come and do. That's it. So if, for example, take me, I'm not a big swimmer. I don't like swimming. Well, that's not my best exercise probably that I should do in my program because I just don't like to do it. I like to power walk, so I should be doing that. And that's why I do a lot of that during the week. So I would recommend that if you like biking or if you like hiking or whatever the exercise is, do that one and really stick to it. That way you can master that and really develop that in your program. I had mentioned also the benefits of strength training. In right now, recent times, we've really seen a shift. It used to be strongly recommended that we need to do cardio aerobic training, which means you should be doing the, swimming or walking or what have you as many times a day. And then strength training, yeah, maybe if you can do it once or twice. Well, now that's kind of flipped in recent years, actually. There's been a lot of medical scholarly peer-reviewed journals that are coming out and actually saying, you know what, given the choice of the two, strength training probably would be preferable and then cardio. And a lot of people first ask, well, why is that? And one of the things with strength training, and we know this, again, it helps build muscle growth, it helps with, musculoskeletal system, it helps with better posture, your core, abdominal strength, all of that. But also hand in hand, there are actually cardiorespiratory benefits of strength training, believe it or not. There's been, again, empirical studies that have backed that up as well. And so a lot of people, like a good resource, a guy named Dr. Peter Attia, A-T-T-I-A, he wrote a book called Outlive, which really delves into that. So not to go down that rabbit hole, but that's what I'm kind of going. Has anybody heard of that? I maybe saw, yeah, good guy. Very, very good person to listen to for sure. Great resource. And then again, just as I mentioned, by a show of hands, let me just ask, anybody in here like the group exercise classes, like for example, yoga, step, anything like that? Perfect. Yeah, take advantage of those. I'm going to get to that in a little bit, the reason why, but camaraderie goes a long way when you work out with other people. You've heard that term, misery enjoys company. That's kind of like goes hand in hand with that, right? If you're going to work hard and sweat and hurt, then it's better to have fellow comrades with you. But just, again, kidding aside, really, when you're a lot of studies will show that people get real motivated when they're with someone else, like an accountability partner. And I hear it all the time. As a personal trainer by trade, I have all the time, if I had a nickel for every time I've heard this, I'd be a millionaire right now, that a lot of times clients will tell me at the very beginning of the appointment, they'll look at me and they'll come in and they'll say, I swear, if we didn't have an appointment right now, there's no way I'd be here right now doing the workout with you. Meaning, basically, they felt accountable. They didn't want to stand me up, that they paid a lot of money for that time to be there. So if you invest, like for example, and you have a buddy and you were going to meet the buddy and go outdoor walking, you don't want to let that buddy down and say, I just don't feel like going out for a walk today. Or, if you're going to a class and you told so-and-so, hey, I'll meet you at that class, and you don't show up, they're going to be worried and like, why didn't you show up for the class? So again, a lot of it really, as you can see, is that whole motivation factor. It's what I like to call self-determination theory. That really does, and again, I know I recognize some familiar faces in here. I've done a whole talk about self-determination theory in terms of how that really motivates and helps when you're working out with someone else. And then if you jump in, again, just looking 35,000 feet high right now at nutrition, just the basic constructs of nutrition is to eat a diet that kind of looks like this, where you see a lot of different colors, a lot of dark leafy greens. You don't see really any starches or processed foods. I don't see anything in a box or a can up there, sugars, things like that. So when you take, and I've done a whole hour on this. I'm not going to obviously today, but in my 5 minute of the hour right now to tell you about what the most important things nutrition-wise is, if you take all the top tier diets that have been very popular, that people swear that work, like keto diet, Mediterranean diet, paleo diet, intermittent fasting, they all have a common underlying, common denominator that threads them together. And there's three things that really tie them together. These three things that if you do, and stick to, this is what it really comes down to. It's very basic, it's very simple, and it's very easy to follow. It's just quality, quantity, and timing, right? So basically quantity, quality, timing. What are we eating? How much of it are we eating? And when are we eating? Those are the three things. That's it. That's basically it. And so again, a lot of them like to tie their own cute little things on. Well, no, this is better or this is better. really, if you think about it, if we keep our calories sensibly, right? Using me for an example, okay? I shouldn't probably have more than, say, 2,500 calories in a day. I should probably be eating most of my meals that include some types of, especially vegetables, some fruits, and really low on the sugary starches. That's what's really to be careful. In Younger Next Year, you probably remember they say, quote, don't eat crap, right? That was one of the things that they keep saying in the book. And so I agree with that. Just we know what to eat. When you go into a grocery store, you've heard this a million times, you go in and you walk around the perimeter of the grocery store, that's where your most nutritious foods are, whether it be meats, whether it be, lean meats and the proteins and the produce and everything else. Everything else in is your garbage, like when you're going down the aisles, boxes, cans, starches, sodium, preservatives, and we know that. But, and again, I'm not trying to say don't ever go down the aisles of the grocery store. I'm just saying that we know in general, kind of high level, what we should be eating as far as quality goes. Quantity, again. And then as far as timing, that's really a key also. That's a third construct that a lot of people will miss out on and a lot of people are confused about. When I'm talking with my clients and I try to challenge them, I try to tell them don't eat anything heavy or any carbs or starches after 4 p.m. And why do I say that? Well, one of the reasons is because what happens after 4, 5, 6 p.m., we usually sit down and we let our food sit because we're watching TV, we're hanging out, we're on the couch, whatever, right? So most of us aren't getting ready to go out and power walk and burn that off. If we are, great. But in general, I always just challenge people, try to eat your heaviest meals in the morning. And you've heard this before as well, too. Eat like a king in the morning, a prince like during the day, and a pauper in the evening. It's basically your fuel for your body. If you're having that heavy fuel later on, that's going to turn into fat, and that's going to sit there, and that's not going to metabolize. When you eat very hearty in the morning, and again, I'll use myself for example again, I love Publix sub sandwiches. I get the whole foot long right in the morning. I'm there at 7 o'clock, and I load it up, and that gives me my fuel to just get me through the day. And then during the day, I'm snacking on protein bars, protein drinks. Very boring, I know, but it works. And then in the evening is like a lean meat, like a lean chicken breast, fish, and then some vegetables. That's it. That's pretty much and I'm pretty lucky because I'm not picky. I mean, I'm just not a picky eater. But I think that's, I find for me, that's what works. You just got to find what works for you in terms of, okay, this is the way that I should be done. Like intermittent fasting is one of the best methods that I know of, and it works because of the timing. You'll hear people with that compressed eating style, and that's why they lose weight. Taking a step aside from this for a second, you've probably heard the phenomena of Ozempic or Mounjaro. Anybody in here know anybody that's been on that or has taken it? Some of us have, yeah. It's working like gangbusters. I mean, it's a true weight loss medicine. There's no question about it. So I did want to throw that out there because we have seen breakthrough scientifically of that recently that goes hand in hand. Yes, some people need that because it was first started as a diabetic medication. And so if somebody is, whether they are morbidly obese or overweight and they need to do that, then again, there's something like that works. And then hydration. I see a lot of people with their water in here today too, so that's great. That's really good. Water, water, water. That is what we should be drinking all the time. And people ask how much water should we be drinking in a day, and we've always heard the term of 8-ounce glasses, right? Half a gallon, about roughly. That's a good metric to go by, just to live healthily. If there's people that ask me, well, how do I lose weight? That's when I tell them, drink more water. Then I challenge them to take their body weight, whatever they are, like me, I'm 185 pounds, cut it in half. That's the amount of ounces you should be drinking in a day. So in my case, I should be drinking like 80 ounces of water if I was trying to promote weight loss for myself. That's a lot of water. But again, that's a great way to stick to it because our body is 70% water. When people ask me, oh, well, I had 3 cups of coffee this morning, does that count? And I say, no, if anything, that's actually a negative. You need to make up and drink 3 extra glasses of water and make up for it because we know it's a diuretic, it has caffeine, it takes away. It's a negative each time that we drink that coffee or that tea. And again, I'm guilty of it, so I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm the biggest coffee fanatic, so I get it. But, especially when it's summer and it's so humid outside and we're sweating like crazy, all the more reason to be drinking as much water as possible too. Very, very important. And again, that goes to brain health, that goes to stimulating cognition, you name it, just everything else that's tied hand in hand with water, which is the source of our life. And then sleep too, so important. One of the things that I see when I'm working with the younger crowd, like for example, millennials or people younger than them, this is where they're most deficient. They don't do well in this at all. And I personally think, because I'm almost a millennial, not quite, I'm older than a millennial, but I think that what I've seen from my experience of working with those people is that they're real driven real hard right now with work. They have high expectations, and a lot of people are real tied to work. And again, with the whole pandemic that happened, I think you see a lot of people with anxiety and stress, and they just don't have enough time to do this. Sleep is just as important as those other components. And as I was talking about with strength training, cardio, eating right, this is another whole part of the picture of total wellness. It really is. It ties into our health. If we're not getting enough sleep, we're no good at all then. And that's going to be really taken away. On average, they tell us that it should be, they give a window about 7 to 9 hours a day that we should average of sleep. And if we're not getting that, if we're getting only 6, then try to make up and get an hour a nap in the day, because that helps aggregately. That you can accumulate that to catch up, because your cardio rhythm will kind of just catch up to that with respect to sleep. So the goal is just try to get that sleep and recovery, because again, that does really tie in to a healthy lifestyle and balance. And in general, most people aren't getting enough sleep. So again, just some tips for better sleep, for sleep hygiene, are things like what helps at night. What doesn't help at night is, you've heard of blue light, things like our phones, our iPads, TV. Those should be limited, especially to before when we're about to go to sleep, as much as possible, because those really take away, and those are very detrimental. What we should be doing is what people used to do, like reading a book, for example, or if you're into meditation, or just having quiet time to yourself. Things like that would be very beneficial. Just finding out what would it take to relax me and calm me down. I'll be very open with you. I take a melatonin because I find, and again, that's a natural hormone too, by the way. It's homeopathic, and we process it naturally in our body. It's not like an Ambien or a drug where you could become resistant to that or even addicted. But in cases of, like, for example, they use melatonin for people who are blind, who have trouble differentiating day and night. They'll usually put them on that if they're having trouble distinguishing that, and at night they'll give them that. And when I first when I first found out the help that it was giving me, I just take one, and it always, I notice it just, it's not that you get dependent on it, but it just kind of helps, just get you in the rhythm of just being able to get a good night's sleep. But again, that might not work for everybody. Some people that doesn't work for, so you just have to find what works for you in that. And then again, it kind of ties into and bridges into mental health and mental well-being. I just mentioned a few minutes ago about the whole phenomena of COVID-19, the last 4 years of what we've gone through. Did anybody in here get affected by that at all, by the pandemic in any way? And only me? Okay, there are a couple of people, yeah. It affected, I think, everybody in some way, right? I mean, it had to. I mean, places were closed. We were limited to seeing people in different various aspects. We had to keep 6 feet distance. We had to wear masks. We either were going to vaccinate or not vaccinate. And again, it just depended on how that was going to influence people. And so a lot of people, their mental well-being was really put to the test, and we saw that a lot. And I'll give you another example. Like with a lot of people that I work with at fitness centers, I saw a huge decline happen, and a lot of those people didn't come back to the gyms. Part of it was because they got used to their behavior modification. If you're not doing something for a while, in my case, a lot of gyms were closed for a few months when COVID first happened. Some people just decided not to come back to the gym, and they just got used to that. And that's fine, again. But then there were others who were just really terrified and scared still. And in fact, I still know a few people that I've reached out to, and I told them it's safe, you can come back, and they still are, again, it's totally their choice, that's fine, but they'd rather stay home and not. And so I would think that that would impact some people's mental well-being and their mental health. And so getting back to exercise, it's so fundamental. Getting back to sleep, it's really important to our mental well-being. Well, having a positive mindset on it too is important. I mentioned maybe about meditation or mindfulness training. A lot of that goes hand in hand with what I mentioned about positive psychology, kind of focusing on that positive reinforcement. In health coaching, when I'm working with people, I'm always trying to figure out what motivates them to move, what motivates them to, in their case, are they trying to lose weight? Are they trying to build muscle? Are they trying to reduce stress? And when I try to identify what helps drive them, then I really try to exploit that and really jump on that and use that as that positive reinforcement. And so, for example, some people might say, gosh, I feel so much better. I sleep better at night. And I'll jump on that. I'll say, well, that's great. Let's stay on that. Let's keep doing what's working. It sounds like whatever is working is better. Or other people will say, you know what, my back's never felt this great. And again, a lot of that's probably with some of the work they've been doing. Maybe they've been doing the stretching that we've been working on, a lot of core strengthening, a lot of different types of just primary movement of strength training. A lot of that will help for sure. So when their mindset is refocused and shifted in a better way, then you find that, again, you get some positive benefits from that as well, too. And building resilience. So we know what the word resilience means. That means, resilience is we're trying to overcome something and we're trying to go through that barrier so that we can get through it, right? So when we get attacked or when we get stung or bit or what have you, well, how do we respond to that? And our response should be constructive, right? So a resilience is just really, again, just building that strong kind of sense of self-determination in your body. And so that way you can just say, I'm not a quitter. I'm going to keep fighting. So whenever I'm working with people, I'm always trying to tell them, and it's almost like cognitive dissonance in psychology. When you're working with people, you're trying to really push them to their limits. Well, in exercise psychology, it's the same thing. When you're working with people, and same thing, I challenge you too, when you're working out, really push yourself, because it's too easy for us to overlook resilience. What I mean by that is some of us get immune or used to doing the same thing. And then if we're expecting different results, that's definition of insanity, right? So really, how do we, for example, I haven't lost a pound, I don't understand it, I'm not getting stronger, what's going on? Have I really done anything to shift or dramatically change my workout in that case? And how would I do that? Well, you have the FIT principle, FIT acronym, frequency, intensity, timing. That's tied into exercising. Frequency, how many times are we working out and exercising in a week? Intensity, are we really pushing ourselves to 60 to 80% of the max of what we should be able to do? You hear that you should be working 60 to 80% of your maximum cardiovascular training, strength training, etc. And then timing, how long in duration is my power walk that I'm doing? And I'll give you, going back to the start of COVID in 2020, when the gyms were closed, what I found beneficial was to up my walking game. I started really hiking a lot during the day because I had a lot more free time. And so when I would walk, I used to walk like, say, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Well, then I got to like walking an hour and a half. I was like, hey, this is fun, this is therapeutic. And then I noticed the side benefits. I was like, wow, I can't believe it. My body fat's reduced. That's kind of different. Or I feel better. I sleep better. Again, going back to sleep one more time. Or again, just different things like where you notice like you have a lowered resting heart rate, your blood pressure is lowered, and all of that goes hand in hand. When we go to our annual doctor checkups, that's what we want to do, is to be able to build that resilience, because again, it's just like a muscle. The way to build a muscle, and it sounds weird, it sounds counterproductive, is to hurt it. It really is. Not hurting it meaning like pain, but hurting it by challenging it. Like if you're doing a bicep curl, you want to work till you get to number 12, 13, 14, and you're like, ooh, I feel the burn. Not where you're feeling like too painful, but you know what I mean. Where you feel it like, wow, I'm going to feel that tomorrow. That's going to feel sore. Well, that's how that muscle grows, because you're breaking the muscle fibers down. And I know it sounds kind of weird that way, but that's truly how strength training is. That's how cardiorespiratory training is, by the way. If you're pushing that power walking, which I try to do too when I'm out there, you should be challenging yourself so that you can't have a normal conversation with someone you're walking with. You should be huffing and puffing and catching your breath. That's how it should be when you're power walking or, whenever you're doing any type of cardio training. And the same thing with eating. A lot of it's sacrifice. A lot of it, if you have a plate full of vegetables up here on a table and a plate full of donuts here, I see it at church all the time. Whenever I go there, you see all the people migrating over here to these donuts, including me, by the way, and nobody here at the lonely vegetables too. But again, it's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of just saying, okay, I'm going to suck it up, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to do what I know I should be doing in that case. Another component is, as I mentioned, social engagement, social connections. there have been studies over time, research has shown that the more you are connected to other people, you have a healthier longevity, you have a better lifestyle, you have a more positive outlook, because we're humans. We were made to socially interact. That's why, going back to the pandemic, that was so depressing for people. That was the opposite. We were forced to isolate and quarantine and not be with people, right? That was really depressing. I felt the worst thing I felt about it was when I was working with some people at retirement homes and assisted living places. I had a client, they were in their late 80s, and they weren't even allowed to physically be together. They had to be in a different wing, separated. And I was just like, that is just not right in my mind. I was like, that's terrible. And again, looking back at that, funerals, right? You couldn't go to a funeral physically in some cases. You had to Zoom and do that. Or even other celebrations like weddings were canceled and such. So we as humans and creatures of habit are supposed to get together and eat together and drink and party and socialize. And no different than we're doing right now. That's why we're here, we're meeting. And a lot of things that the Fayette Senior Services has to offer as well, too. I highly encourage, if you have the ability to take advantage of doing some of the programs that they do, go for it, please. I think that's great. And then there's other groups and clubs. If there's a garden club or a book club or any type of social club that you can join, look into it. There's a lot of different things like that are available. So I think that's so important. And again, that goes hand in hand with healthy aging. You see a lot of people who are just in a better mood when they're able to commune with others. And again, that just goes with any type of social interaction. The research has shown it, so we definitely know. And then, not to get too philosophical or too deep on this, but is really finding out what our purpose and passion is. Again, studies have shown that when you realize for yourself, what is my purpose? What's my sense of being here? You would have a better chance of being healthier and living a healthier lifestyle. It's just the bottom line. If we feel like we have no sense and direction or purpose or meaning for life, then what is the point then, basically? I mean, again, I'm not trying to get very philosophical here, but it's just like, in that case, then what, are we just supposed to be and just here, live and breathe oxygen? Really, we want to think, well, no matter what our, faith or religious aspect or what have you, I'm not talking about that aspect. I'm talking about just as a human being, if we're here, let's make the best of it. If we're going to be good to other people and we're going to volunteer when we can. I'll give you, this past week I was at the Tyrone Library and I was walking and this truck was driving and there's this turtle right there in the middle of the street. And he was like ducked in and he turtled in, lack of a better word, in the shell. And the truck's going, and I'm like, oh, and I ran out, and I stopped. I said, don't, no, and he skidded and screamed and braked, and I picked up the turtle, and then I thought he was going to be really angry at me, and I was like, let me just bring him over here, and they have a little pond over there, and the truck driver looked, and he was like, oh, and he gave me the big thumbs up, and he was like, yeah, good job. So, and I took it, and I put it in the pond, and I just felt like, I'm like, if we see something like that, that's the right thing to do, right? If you see somebody having trouble opening the door because they've got a bunch of groceries in their hands, the right thing to do is you go over and you pull the door open, things like that. Us guys, if we're with our lady, what's the right thing to do? We're supposed to open the door for them, right? We should be chivalrous when possible, things like that. But, again, if we're doing things that mean purpose, you do not only feel better, but you're contributing to society. No different than, by the way, being a researcher. At part-time, I'm also an adjunct professor for psychology for a couple of universities. And a lot of things that I do is research. And the dean and the provost, they have encouraged us. The point of it is not to pass these doctoral PhD learners and get them to get their degrees. It's really to contribute to advancing knowledge. That's what our job as a researcher is. Our research job in my part-time position is that we have existing bodies of literature already, and our goal is to fill those gaps, what they call, of literature. They have what's called problem spaces and try to contribute what we can. And really, that's what it comes down to, because knowledge is power, and knowledge in any type of endeavor is helpful when we can help others and, again, give back. And then, I love this picture, by the way, too, with the airplane, the skydiving. Anybody in here ever done skydiving or jumped out of a plane? Wow, oh my goodness. Well, you're a lot braver than I am, because my hand's not going up there with you. It never will. That's not on my bucket list, by the way. That's pretty crazy. Whoever raised your hand, I would never, no.
First jump is the easiest jump.
Is that right? Yeah.
literally you're looking at it, and you don't know what the hell's going on.
You would agree with that? Those that raised your, yeah, wow.
The hardest jump is the second one, because we used to pack our own shoes. When you're there packing and you see that helicopter land, you're saying, "Oh my God, I know what I got to do." So you start getting worried right there.
Wow,
You
wow.
get past the second jump and everything. And I say this from a little bit of experience. I got 34 jumps in, and all of them.
Oh, I'm glad you were. Wow, that's good. I'm glad there wasn't an unsuccessful one. Unbelievable. Wow, thank you. I can't believe that. And again, the number of hands that went up on that one. The people that didn't raise their hands like me, do you have any inclination to do that as a goal? Like I see a lot of this. Like, don't worry, I'm right there with you. I'm not me. I can barely get on a roller coaster, so that won't be me. I guarantee you that. But thinking about new things, jumping out of a plane, that would be something I would never think about. But there's other things too, there might be a class. Be like, I've never done Tai Chi. Maybe you try that and see. That's a great way to figure out either, hey, I like that, or maybe figure out, I don't like that. I don't want to do that again. And so that's fine. I encourage things like that. If there's other areas of different types of engagement or social connections or clubs that you get an opportunity, or volunteering, as I mentioned. I think that if anybody has the opportunity, if you're already doing that, great. If you have opportunities to that, I definitely encourage that as well. Whenever possible. But I would agree. I mean, I guess you could tell me, you're the expert. Would you say that it helps promote what they call youthfulness? Do you feel like exhilarated and young when you're doing it? I would guess so. I mean, yeah, because it's just you're seeing your life kind of flash before your eyes, I would guess. So.
You jump out of an airplane and land and everything, get your chute. You go to lunch or you go to chow hall. You walk through that chow hall.
You're the man. You're just going through and strutting and saying, "Look what I just did." That's pretty cool. I commend you for that. For those of you that raised your hands, that's amazing. Anybody in here retired now or looking to retirement? Some of us. Good. Yeah, that's great. Retirement is huge. That's a whole chapter in the book of Younger Next Year. They talk about what they call retiring with dignity, right? It would be terrible for us to retire and look back and look at our bank account or retirement account and say, "Oh, wow, I don't have anything to live on," or "I'm going to be dependent on Social Security," right? Again, I mentioned earlier in the presentation, Dave Ramsey. There's a lot of different great financial podcasters that are available. There's a lot of wonderful financial institutions, like, for example, Charles Schwab. A lot of them have free classes. I'm a novice. I know nothing when it comes to finances, but in terms of retirement, some of the things that they help you with, and a lot of times they'll do it for free too. Some places like at the YMCA and others will actually have classes of exactly what I'm talking about, is saying, okay, I'm going to bring my budget in, I'm going to show you what my assets are, I'm going to show you my debts, help me out. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything right. They'll tell you how annuities work. They'll tell you whether or not it makes sense to contribute this much to your 401k right now. Should I be taking out of my Roth right now? They'll be going, all of that. And in my case, Charles Schwab does that all for me at a very minimal. I think I pay him like $50 a year to do that because I know nothing about that. I'm like, you guys handle that. You're the experts. And there's other people too that are accountants that'll do it very affordably, and other resources. But I strongly recommend, if again, the book really goes into this in depth. But in terms of retirement, it would be great to, as I mentioned earlier, have sacrificed as much as we can now, so that later, we can just reap those rewards when possible. But again, getting back to this generation now, not to pick on those millennials and those younger people, but they don't live looking like this right now. And again, most of them can't write a check for $500 to clear this week because they're living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, right. They don't write checks. They do bill pay online. I forgot, but they do Venmo and Zelle. Yeah, you're right about that. I shouldn't have even said that. Yeah, check. But I believe, again, not to go off a tangent, but in schools, this is grossly neglected right here. I wish when I was their age, when I was in college or what have you, I wish that there was a course to take on learning just budgeting 101, basic accounting, and just learning how to live within my means. And the book goes through that a lot. It basically tells you just don't live beyond your means. Live with what you can afford. If you can't afford it right now, then don't buy it now. Wait till you can build up to save for it and then do it. It just makes common sense. And again, I think I'm preaching the choir. A lot of you are nodding your heads saying, yep. And again, I would agree. I think that, again, we've been lucky to have been living like that. And Yeah, just common sense. Yeah. What used to be common sense. Yeah. Like what our parents and our grandparents used to tell us, a lot of them were smarter. They would keep their money under the bed because, again, some of these banks you can't trust. Some of the stock markets, when we have another crash or when we have a recession, what have you, how are we going to depend on that? So for financial planning, again, I strongly recommend if you have an estate planner, a financial planner. Again, I think there's a lot of resources around that'll help with that as well. There's a lot. YouTube is my go-to. If somebody asks me, tell me about financial planning 101, I'll look on YouTube and I'm like, here you go. And I'll look up the video. I'll see how vetted it's been. I'll see how many likes, how many star ratings, and I'll say, this looks like and I'll most times watch it and just see and a lot of times I'll learn from it myself. I'm like, wow, that was great. And I'll share it. So if there's something like that, I would strongly recommend going on YouTube and just seeing like what videos you can watch, like a how-to tutorial in terms of things like financial wellness, because there's a lot of correlation with financial wellness and healthy aging. If we're struggling, we're probably going to be stressed, and then we're probably going to be thinking about how I'm going to make that payment or how am I going to do this. But when we're comfortable and we have everything in line and we're like, okay, great, I'm glad I had that emergency fund. I'm glad I was able to pay for that huge expense that we weren't expecting, but we had budgeted. Then we feel a little bit more comfortable and at ease, and it just makes sense, in terms of just living healthfully. And let's see here. As far as technology, I guarantee you, and not only Fayette Senior Services, but there's a lot of places that will have classes. Has anybody in here, by a show of hands, done like a just basic technology 101 class or things like that? They have them available. Again, going back to YouTube, but they have a lot of these resources. I think a lot of companies like Apple and some of the phone carriers will offer things like that, like a free class like we're doing right now. And they will say, let us teach you how to do your iPhone, to do the updates. Let us teach you how to add your contacts. Let us teach you how to do password protection, encryption, etc., data privacy, which are very important. So I would recommend, if nothing else, let's face it, we are in the era of technology, right? All of us have a smartphone. We have to, right? Because we have to rely on it. You have to conform, sort of, so to speak. And so we really have to figure out, how do all those apps work? And again, there's plenty of resources that'll help with that. But the point of it is just trying to stay in tune and stay intact of how that works. And it's funny because a lot of my clients who are in their 80s and better, they'll know stuff more on the iPhone than I do. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know how to do that. And they'll show me. So again, a lot of it's just practice and just kind of reiterating what you're doing with that. And then we're getting towards the end here, believe it or not. We're going to talk about what is our action plan, what is our next step, so to speak. When you have a goal, a good thing to do, I see a lot of people taking notes, by the way, and that's very smart. When you're taking notes or when you're writing a plan, you can refer back to it for success. A lot of my clients I've worked with, they'll have I didn't even tell them to do this, but they'll write down what they had for the week and eating, and they'll tell me, they'll read it to me. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And they'll tell me, they'll be like, I wrote it down because it's harder to eat that Snickers and be honest with you and show it to you. And I'm like, no, that makes sense. And same thing for ourselves. We're harder on ourselves if we write it down. We're like, okay, did I do enough this week for my exercising? It's a kind of a commitment to ourselves, if nothing else. We're kind of giving ourselves that self-commitment, that accountability, and just sticking to that whole self-determination that we have. And so I always recommend that if you're going to goal set, make them, quote, SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. You've heard that. You want to make goals that make sense, that are in line of what I can do. They're not crazy or incredible goals, but they're goals that nonetheless you can stick to and that are reasonable, that you're able to measure them and be able to do them in a timely manner. So again, just to reiterate kind of what we've gone over here, and yeah, again, we're at the end here already. We covered a lot of topics, high level, as I mentioned. We were just looking at the main points of a lot of things that were discussed with living next year. I guarantee you that if I throw the gauntlet down to everybody in this room and I tell you that I want you to add one more day of exercise into whatever you're doing right now, 1 year later, when we meet on August 2nd, 2025, we're going to sit in this room and you will look younger next year. You'll feel younger next year. I guarantee you, I promise, that's 100% guarantee from me or your money back, okay? And or the other goal, the gauntlet, is to eat healthier, to put one more vegetable serving and replace a starch with it. during your day, and that's what you're going to do for the next year. And then again, by August next year, you're going to look in the mirror and be like, wow, that guy's a miracle worker. He really told the truth. I do look so much better and healthier and younger. And or, you know, again, sleep better. If you're not sleeping good right now, work on some sleep hygiene. Put the phone away, put the iPad aside, and really just say, tonight, I'm going to get the best night's sleep I've ever gotten. Like for me, I sleep at 8 o'clock every night, believe it or not, because I get up really early. So I'm in bed by 8 and I'm done, and I get up really, really early. But whatever works for you, you know, however you can get to sleep, then I challenge you and think about other things. Do I have time to volunteer? Do I have time to do social engagement of what I'm already doing? I also talked about financially, retirement, technology-wise. Do I feel comfortable in all those different categories? How is, my health in terms of all of those that we've gone over today? And so my kind of end statement, just to bring it all together, is to just kind of, let's wrap this all up with a clear statement. I started off an hour ago by saying we were going to talk about the theme of you're as old as you feel, right? Well, we're going to change that around, and the new phrase will be you are as young as you feel. Okay, that's what I want you to go with today, if nothing else. So go on and just, again, remember you are as young as you feel, and you're going to be younger next year. And that's my challenge to you. Thank you. So, all right. And I guess with that, we still have about 5 to 10 minutes. If you've got time, we've got a few minutes to chat and just do a little question and answer. I know we kind of went through that really fast, but you had your hand up first, and please go ahead and ask, and I'll repeat the question too so everyone else can.
It's not a question.
Oh, yeah.
It's just on the strength training, when you're promoting that, and I know you know this, throw in that it strengthens bones, because little old ladies need that. And balance.
Yes.
Balance and bones is, and strength training, that's what's going to keep you from falling and breaking.
Right.
And the other reason you want to do squats, you can tell people this, and again, I'm sure you know this, the number one reason people end up in nursing homes or assisted living, they cannot get off the toilet.
Yes. And you did that without even your hands too. That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up too. And I remember there was another young lady who came in, I overheard about balance, maybe that you were going to do a balance test as well. Very good point, by the way. Yes, very, very good. Strength training goes hand in hand with what you just said about balance and being able to do what you just brought up a point of functionality, what we call functional training. So for example, when I'm working with clients and I have them doing like squats and picking something up off the floor over and over, and like, why am I taking this medicine ball, picking it up off the floor? Because I'm like, well, you said that you had a 3-year-old toddler that you have at home. I want you to be able to pick that 3-year-old toddler up and to be able to do that as long as you can. And, so again, it's just functional training. Or like you said, getting up and off of the toilet as well. Very, very good point. By the way, yes, please.
About 2 years ago, I broke a bone in my heel. And while I was still in urgent care, I realized I had to get off the toilet with one leg.
Ooh, wow. Gosh, that is challenging.
Yeah,
wow.
I can tell you, that's like,
That is willpower right there.
Well, it's a reality thing. We have a 2-story home, so I had to go up and down stairs by sitting and pushing.
Wow.
So, you learn to do what you have to do, but trying not to break bones is a really helpful thing.
I commend you, again, and, going back to the balance too, I did want to point this out because, I overheard about the balance thing. You already know this, I'm sure, but I mentioned a few minutes ago that the reason why we strength train, you're breaking muscles, bones down, your cardiorespiratory, you're challenging yourself. A lot of it hurts. A lot of it feels like work. That's why they call working out work, right? Because you're working at it. Same thing with balance, for example. A balance exercise you could do, if you've not already done this, I challenge everyone to do what's called the sobriety test, where you're walking heel to toe and you're trying to walk in a straight line. If you challenge yourself and do this every day, and just do this down the hallway at home, and that you have a kitchen counter or something to hold on to, I would strongly advise have something solid or a wall or something that you can balance yourself. But that is a great way. And again, if you're doing other things, like if you're on one leg and you're reaching forward with the other leg back and you're doing things like that, or kicking back with one leg. And again, it's a lot of, why would I do that? I feel like I'm wobbly all over the place. That is the way to increase balance. The way to get better balance is to throw yourself off and challenge yourself by doing imbalance exercises. It sounds counterintuitive, but it really is.
Yeah, yeah. And what you just said, very important to
Have something to hold on to.
You
Yes.
don't want to break something while you're
Correct.
practicing balance to prevent breaking something.
Right, and that's my number one thing. My biggest thing, I wouldn't hate if anybody would fall down. Doctors hate that. Doctors say that when we fall, if we break our hip, that could be almost a death sentence, almost, because then it really, we become sedentary, and you really want to avoid that. So you are right, and how to fall. I fell, I'll admit it, like 6 months ago, I dislocated my shoulder. I fell down my stairs. I wasn't doing anything abnormal. I just took that first step, and then I went and boom, and I grabbed the railing, my arm popped out, and I was in the emergency room. But a lot of it is how to fall. We don't want to fall like a tree, like splat, like just over like that. If we're falling and we know we're going to fall, it takes a split second. You have to kind of go with it and just collapse as wide surface area as you can. So if I'm falling, if I'm in the middle of falling, I do not want to fall like a tree, just all in one fell swoop. I want to fall so that I get my surface area, and then it kind of distributes the fall as wide as possible, like that. Or if you're going with momentum, you kind of roll with it too. And then that way that mitigates kind of any damage to where you're impacting yourself, so that you kind of flow with that fall. Yes, ma'am. Thank you again. That was good.
I have a question related to like Parkinson's disease or neurological type things that affect the balance. That walking foot in front of foot, would that help a Parkinson's patient to, is that a possibility?
I would, you know what, that's a good question. I would have them do it, and we didn't touch that a lot on terms of neurological balance. You were asking, so the question was in terms of like a Parkinson's patient, would like a heel-to-toe walk help them? If it was my client, I would tell them to do it, and I would challenge them to do it, and I would certainly have something to hold on to or be right there with them doing it. It can't hurt, if nothing else, because, again, the way to sharpen our balance is to really challenge our balance exercises. With Parkinson's patients, a lot of times, if they're suffering with different types of space differential and trying to depth perception and things like that, they'll do what's called vestibular exercises. You've seen this before. They'll take their water bottle or their finger and they'll follow it through like this, because they're trying to they're doing that to challenge themselves so that they get that space and the eyes working neurologically so that it makes sense to their brain that they can see. I don't know a lot about Parkinson's, but unfortunately, it's one of those things where if it happens, the goal is just to mitigate and slow it down as much as possible. That's all we know now with science as far as that.
Recently, I read about what they're calling, well, its technical name is LSDT. They're calling it big exercises for Parkinson's.
Huh.
Especially from the middle stage heading towards the end.
Oh, okay.
Gets worse or all. But that's supposed to help kind of correct some of that. Do you have anything on that?
First time I'm hearing of it. Did you say LSVT? Is that what you said?
Yeah, you can just Google that.
I will.
LSVT. It's
Okay.
been around a while, but
Huh.
I just heard about it myself.
Yeah.
They also refer to it as the big exercises.
Big
Or
exercise.
boxing exercises. They're not boxing with anybody, but it's big movement.
Huh. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Has anybody else? I heard some yeses in here. You've heard of that? I've seen that. I have seen that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so maybe there's something to that, just that big motion.
I wonder if you've got any guidelines for somebody who does not like to drink water and really needs to because of multiple health issues. I'm talking about an older gentleman who's had prostate cancer. Does not want to be visiting the bathroom.
Oh,
to
yeah.
try and get that person to drink water is something that is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have any guidelines at all as to how you encourage somebody to do that.
Right, good question. So how do we encourage people to drink more water, especially in this case? There was a whole chapter devoted to that in terms of the importance of hydration, especially someone with prostate cancer or any type of prostate issues. And I get it. I understand like where they're coming from. Like, I don't want to go to the bathroom repetitively. I totally can see that, why. My only thing would be just to give them the big picture of, if you do this, you're going to be healthier, in terms of a lot of people that I see in those assisted living places, those places that I visit, a lot of them, the nurses, the two big things they try to do is get them to drink water and eat. Get them to drink water and eat repetitively, like over and over, because a lot of them don't want to. I'm not hungry. I don't have an appetite. I don't want to eat. I don't want to drink. And really, I guess it's just one of those things where you just have to give them that tough love and just be a constant nuisance and just really do it till you're bugging them. And just, I know you don't want to hear this, but you need that water. They have these, I don't know if anybody in here has seen them, but they're like a gallon-sized water that have times on them. You've seen that. I guess that's one thing, and say, hey, I paid a lot of money for this. I want you to drink this and these certain. Just tough love. I guess that's the best advice I've got on that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
One of the things that's happening, instead of a glass of 8 ounces, I have this little glass of 6 ounces. I know I can down 6 ounces each time. And it just
There you go.
the challenge out, you know.
Maybe that's
When you get a whole glass of water and get my little 6 ounces.
that's not a bad idea, actually. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. That's good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, very good. Great questions, everybody. Again, thank you so much. We're right on time, and that's perfect. So thanks for your time, and it was a lot of fun with you. So I'll see you next time. And again, I've thrown the challenge down. One thing. What one thing are you going to do? Think about that for this weekend. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Appreciate it.